And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with a Coach. And we are with Michael Perry today. And Michael's just going to take a minute to relocate himself so that he can strengthen his signal. But this morning, with my Coffee with a Coach, I have my very fun, I call this my Zen mug. I'm, still trying to get used to the opposite hand. Here we go. And the funny story about this mug is at Christmas time a few years ago, this mug showed up under my Christmas tree, and it said to Courtney, but it had no from. And I reached out to every family member I could think of to say, "Hey, did you get me this mug? I really love it. Thank you." And no one owned up to getting me this mug. And so I say that this mug is from Santa Claus. And I'm drinking my chai rooibos today. And for anyone who's trying to get rid of caffeine in their life, rooibos tea is the best way to go. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you
All
doing
right.
today? Sounds like
I'm doing great.
you off to a great start this morning.
It's a 2-cup morning. This is my second cup of tea already, and I may go for a 3-cup.
I feel like
So
Fridays can be like that.
it sure can. So what are you drinking this morning?
So I'm having just plain black coffee. It's something I've been having since I was a kid. My grandpa used to cook coffee grounds on the stove in a pot, and we'd drink it whole grounds and all. And ever since then, I've always had my morning drink is just a black cup of coffee.
Oof. Now, I'm not a coffee drinker, but that sounds pretty rough to me.
It helps wake you up, but the taste doesn't do it. The extra caffeine will.
I bet. Are you chewing on those grounds?
No, luckily I'm past that point in my life, but I do miss it from time to time.
All right. I'm just checking to see if our broadcast is live in Illuminators yet, so I can see if people have joined us. But I'm not seeing it yet. So we're going to dive right in. And then for those of you who are watching, if you want to ask questions, you can feel free to go ahead and put them in the comments. If you see I think it's just above the screen to give permission to StreamYard, then I'll be able to see your name. But if you don't give permission to StreamYard, I won't be able to see your name, but I will be able to see your comments. So feel free to comment away. So Michael, what are we working on this morning?
So for this morning, I wanted to go over sort of going through grief. It's something I've been going through lately. I lost my significant other last year, and I've been really working on trying to change my vibration and raise my awareness and start really pushing through with life. But it's really hard with the negative emotions constantly trying to sort of bring me back to a ground state. So sort of working with those negative thoughts and the emotional patterns that come with trauma from my grief.
Okay, so what would your question be? If you had to ask a question, what is it?
How do you effectively shorten the refraction period when those moments of grief happen so that you don't wind up dwelling in that state for longer than necessary? So I
Okay.
know you got to feel it to heal it, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's also about making that progress and not dwelling too much and letting that become your state of mind.
Okay. So what does a healthy state of mind look like to you?
Being able to be grounded in the present. It's good to be back in the past again, feel it as you're going through the notions of the grief because that's just part of the process. But being able to bring yourself back to the present moment, to be aware
Mhm.
and focusing on what you want in life instead of what you had or what you don't have.
Okay. So are you finding challenge in the length of time that you're having these negative emotions? Is that
Yes, I find myself where I'm going through it. I'm getting better about shortening the period it happens. And I think that's just the time. But
Mhm.
very often do I find myself catching on to it, and then I catch on to an emotion from it, and that emotion starts becoming a part of my daily thought process and mentality, whether
Okay.
it's pertaining to the grief or not, honestly. I know I have a
Okay.
lot of guilt with everything, and I shouldn't. I don't own the guilt, but it's there regardless. And then I start feeling guilty in life and events and current relationships, and I know it's just the emotion itself trying to take itself on and release itself, but
Okay.
it's easy to get caught in that thought process and then be stuck in it.
Okay. So when you say you're stuck is a form of resistance. So can you give me a concise statement of what you're resisting in these moments?
I think allowing myself to move on. I haven't thought about it like that, but I
Mm,
think that might be a big part of it. Is I do have a lot of, I mean, the guilt and self doubt and shame I
mhm,
feel just
mm.
from not being able to be there enough. And I think that when I get stuck into that mode, it is because I don't feel adequate enough.
Okay. And what do you think moving on looks like? What is it you're expecting of yourself?
For the grief,
What does moving on look like? So what are your expectations of how you're going to be once you've moved on?
to hold on to it more as a memory than something that brings pain, something that being able to start really keeping my mind focused on the present and where I'm going and not, yeah, and not being sent back into the past, I guess you could say.
Okay. All right. And it was interesting that when you and I were talking before this, um, you so graciously wanted to make this relatable to other people, and we will. You'll see how this happens. But um, what I wanted to get at with that is that grief is an emotion, right? It's one emotion that we go through, and it's absolutely a process that we need to go through, and it has nothing to do with the person you're grieving.
I've never thought about it like that.
Okay. So that's any emotional processing, has nothing to do with the other person, right? They may have been the catalyst for it, they may have been the trigger for it, but the grief is within you. And so, first, just owning that this is your emotion and it actually has nothing to do with the other person.
Right, right.
Okay.
No,
Does
that
that
makes total
make sense?
sense, though. Yeah, completely.
Okay. So, with me saying that, does that give you any clarity yet as to how to process through?
It gives me a concept of that I need to realize that all these sensations I'm going through is all my own doing and all my own view of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of what I got away from that.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if you can hear in the background. I've got a 3-year-old who's or a 4-year-old who's yelling at me right now.
Comes with the territory.
It does. Um, hold on, just one moment. I
No worries at all.
apologize. I don't know how this is going to go. It's a snow day here in Colorado Springs, by the way.
Yep.
Okay, so the idea of processing through any emotion is allowing yourself to honor the emotion.
Okay.
Every emotion chemically lasts in our brain for 90 seconds.
Right, right.
So that's the life of an emotion. Anything beyond that is us bringing ourselves into the past and re-triggering that emotion. And so what we're looking to do is break that cycle. But
Okay.
we don't want to deny what we're going through,
Right.
right? Because what we resist persists, and denial is a form of resistance. And so, in honoring the emotion, one of the best techniques that I've ever learned, and it was from an amazing mentor of mine, Jason Goldberg. He says, when you're trying to honor an emotion, say to yourself, what if I knew this was only going to last for the next 60 minutes? How would I treat myself?
Be understanding.
Okay.
That's a valid way to look at that.
Yeah. So be understanding with yourself. What else can you offer yourself?
Compassion, forgiveness, depending on the
Mhm.
emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about those other emotions that you were talking about: shame, guilt.
Yeah. Yeah, those are probably some of my strongest emotions from my childhood. I've been doing a lot of that shadow work, and I've come to see that that's been dictating forces in my life and how I've approached it. And this really helped bring it to the surface where I got to look at it really in detail. And it's made me so aware of these emotions that have controlled my life, my whole life, without me even realizing it.
Yeah. But now you have the awareness,
Yes, there's no
right?
one seeing it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you've turned the light on in the dark room. You see now what's in front of you. And
Yes.
so, what if you let yourself go through each one of those emotions and you gave yourself time to sit with each one and say, what is going to help me feel better with this emotion? So, sitting with guilt, what's going to help me feel better?
Okay. I see what you're saying there.
Okay, so can we just go through that a little bit and come up with some ideas?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Um,
So
okay.
pick any emotion.
Let's do shame because that's probably the biggest one that's impacted my life.
All right. So when you're sitting in shame, right? And we are not trying to go from shame to joy, right? We want a step up. What's
Right.
going to help you feel just a little bit better when you're sitting in shame? What can you do for yourself? What can you say to yourself?
Acceptance, I think, would be the biggest thing that would help with that is knowing in situations that may have been wrong calls or that I did not handle as well as I could to be forgiving with myself and to appreciate the effort that was made.
Does that feel better already?
Yeah.
Do you feel
Yeah.
lighter with that?
Okay. Yeah. I see what you're saying there. I'm
Okay.
feeling it.
Okay. All right. Do you want to try another emotion?
Guilt. Guilt's another big one. I guess if I were to reflect on that, it would be kind of the same process where it's acceptance of doing, knowing I did what I could and the best I could, but also to know that it's okay to do things for myself, which is, I think, the source of most of my grief, or not grief, but my guilt, is because we always feel like we could do more, that we could be more, and that we weren't. And we showed weakness, and that we need to accept that we did do the best we could with the tools at hand.
That's good work right there. How do you feel?
Good. Yeah. Wow.
You feel a change?
Well, I do. I feel a slight shift in that light, you know?
Yeah, and that's what we're looking for, right? There's not going to be a radical jump from guilt to joy or from shame to joy, but you can feel a little bit better. And then the next time you feel that emotion, it's not going to feel as heavy. And you do
Right.
your work again. What else can I do for myself to make myself feel a little bit better?
So would this tie into the shadow work where you're going through your past events and you're trying to give yourself those emotions for those periods in your past?
So, yes, it can. This is a way to get through your shadow work, right?
Okay.
So the shadow work is going into the past. It's shining a flashlight on the things, on the shadow part of ourselves, the part of ourselves that we deny, or the part of ourselves that we dislike, right?
Right.
We figure out, what is it that I don't like, or what is it that I've been hiding from, and we shine a light on that, and then say, what would make me feel a little bit better about that?
Right. So what would your approach be with emotions like jealousy? I know that's
Honestly,
kind of an out of the box one, but that's like as I've been looking at myself and my patterns, I realize certain things like that. I'm not sure where it stems from, but how do you cope with those kind of emotions? Because I
what
feel
is
like
the root of jealousy?
possessiveness? I'm actually not sure.
Deeper than that. So jealousy is a component of, I'm not good enough. I'm comparing myself to someone else.
Okay, and with guilt and shame being dictating forces in my life.
Yep. Yep. So
Wow.
what can you do with the idea of, I'm not good enough?
Well, I think what I've been doing really ties into that. And that's really reflecting on what is good about me, not reflecting on what where my shortcomings are because we all have shortcomings, but really trying to accept all that is good about myself, including the shortcomings. All right.
What if they aren't shortcomings?
Yeah, you got me there. That was good. How would you reword that? Because like after I sat in on your coaching session a while back about the negative self-talk, I've really been trying to look at the things I tell myself and trying to change up what the verbiage is because that really makes all the difference.
I am perfect in my imperfections.
The irony in that statement. Oh, it's so true though. It's so true.
So it depends too on your foundational belief. My foundational belief is that I'm a divine being born of a divine creator in the image of that divine creator. And the divine creator creates nothing. Sorry, I just lost that. The divine creator makes no mistakes.
Right, right.
Okay. So if the divine creator makes no mistakes, then anything that I'm viewing in myself as being a shortcoming is my own perception, has been twisted. That's my programming, right? Because
Right,
somebody at some point along the line told me that I have this shortcoming, right? You're too sensitive, you're too talkative, you're too rambunctious, you're too much of whatever, or you're not enough of.
right,
That's somebody else. That's somebody else's voice. The day you were born believing that you deserved all, that you were
right.
perfect, right?
No, exactly. You're not molded by beliefs or experiences. You're pure.
Exactly. Exactly. And so what we're trying to do with this work, and this is shadow work, is get back to that person, that version of you who came into this world saying, okay, I'm hungry, feed me, and knowing that somebody was going to do it. Okay, I'm cold, make me warm, and knowing that somebody was going to do it, knowing that it was going to be taken care of.
Right,
You are always, always being taken care of. It's a matter of, have you allowed yourself to step into that stream, the stream of wellness that allows for you to be taken care of? Or have you isolated yourself and separated yourself? And any feeling of, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve, is a function of separating yourself from the stream of wellness that exists for you.
wow. I think that's been one of the biggest things with starting to really look at life in this light is my whole life I've spent avoiding the stream, and it's just all this buildup and buildup. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's trying to untake all the dust out from under the rug and really get a smooth surface again.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I love to do in the E3 program, which I've mentioned a few times on Coffee with a Coach, is we actually look at whose voice is it? Whose voice is it that's actually in your head? Because negative self-talk is not you. That is not your own authentic voice. That's someone else's programming that has been laid inside of you.
Right.
And so if we can identify who did it come from, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
I don't know if you can hear that. If we can identify who did it come from, then we can give it back to them.
Right.
And not out of anger, not out of resentment, right? Simply out of knowing that they did the best they could with what they had, but it's no longer serving you. It's no
Right.
longer serving me. And so I release it back to you. That's a shadow work example or exercise.
No, and that makes total sense. I know just thinking about while we were having this talk, it sort of brought me back to when I was 4. I think we talked about it briefly when I talked to you last. Is that my parents put me through psychological diagnosis at like the age of 4. I was very young, and I remember them at the age of 4. I remember them telling me, it might have been a little bit older than that, but it was very young. But I remember the doctor coming in and saying he has a thin shell to the world, and that belief, as much as that was a part of who I was, became a part of my identity. And that's something I've reflected on through the years, and I never really thought about it in context of how that may have impacted my insecurities. But that was someone else's belief that I then embodied in myself. So I could see that being a catalyst for a lot of the things I've gone through life.
And so what I suggest in situations like that is you stop owning the diagnosis, right?
Right,
The diagnosis is there, right? We're not denying that it exists, but I'm not calling it mine anymore. And I actually have an autoimmune disease that I refuse to call my celiac disease.
Right.
Right? I'm not going to own the power of the diagnosis. I'm going to acknowledge that it's there. I'm going to take care of my health, but I don't have to give power to the label.
Right.
Right?
One of the big things with my diagnosis as growing up was being diagnosed with chronic depression and severe bipolar. And I had that my whole childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
it took one day me waking up and being like, I can't be like this anymore. And it didn't happen overnight. But just that shift in mindset slowly got me to pull myself out, where I went from being depressed for majority of my life to really taking a lot of blows to bring me to a down place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy how mind over matter really is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to diagnoses and things we at first tell ourselves this is how we are and who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So we get to create our own identity. And I believe I sent you not too long ago the book Psycho-Cybernetics.
I'm working on it right now, actually.
Okay. So I'm going to suggest that to the audience. If anyone is trying to recreate an identity, if you have been giving labels, or if you've given yourself labels that are no longer serving you, first of all, find gratitude, right? They've gotten you to where you are. So thank you so much for, whatever this path was that I was meant to be on. But I see now that it's holding me back, and I'm ready to shed the label.
Right.
And through the exercises, through the book Psycho-Cybernetics, you get to learn how to reimagine yourself and create a new identity for yourself. And sometimes it's a simple shift. I am thinking of one businessman in town who is phenomenal, and tells the story about how he put the sport jacket on one day and he became a new person. Right?
Right.
Sometimes it's just symbolic, right? It's just that symbol of putting on something different and stepping, so that way you're stepping through the portal into being someone different, into showing up as someone different.
Right.
And we get
Right.
to choose. We have the power to choose.
We do, though. I mean, I heard a quote recently that's really been resonating with me as I've been going through this evolution. And that's, if the snake can't shed its skin, the snake must die.
Beautiful. I love it.
And it's just, it so embodies that it's like I've spent my whole life either putting on layers or removing parts of myself to
Yeah.
live cohesively in my environment and to conform to the life around me.
Yeah.
When in turn, the reality is I need to make the life around me conform to me. And it's
Yes.
such a strange shift in mentality to really look at things like that.
Yeah.
That there is so much power we have within, that we are, like you were saying, I've come to realize we are truly divine entities. We are the embodiment of creation. And
Yeah.
we have the power to warp the world around us as long as we have the willpower and drive to do it. And we get past ourselves, which is now what I'm trying to work on. I've spent my whole life just trying to be better, but it turns out you got to restart. You got to change that identity. You can't
Yeah.
keep being the same person and expect different results.
Bingo. Bingo. You've got it. You've got it. So now the work becomes, who do you want to become? Who do you want to show up as? And this is something that I would suggest you actually sit down with pen and paper and you write it out. And this, again, this is another lesson in E3 is reimagining yourself. Who is it that you now want to be? Because we have this dream up here, right? I mean, your quest for relief of all of these negative emotions is a dream of where you want to be. And you're here right now. And the journey is, who do I need to become in order to reach this up here?
Okay, so sit down with pen and paper, write it out. What other recommendations do you have to try to become your higher self?
I would do that. So
Okay.
start with that, right? Who is it that I want to show up as? And sometimes it helps us to write down, who am I showing up as now? And then let's mark, what is serving me, what isn't serving me, right? So you're really pulling apart the pieces of who you are. Who are you showing up as right now? Because not all of it is bad, right? And let's say none of it is bad. None
I was
of it
about
is
to say,
bad.
kind of like your thought process. There's no shortcomings. Don't look at it like that.
Right. But there are things that are no longer serving you, right? They have been serving you. Now, it depends. When we say serving you, you may be one of those people, and whether you are or not doesn't matter. This is more for general, but you may be one of those people who's comfortable in misery. And so there are certain sections of you, certain pieces of you that have been serving the you that finds comfort through misery.
Yep.
But if you're someone who's looking to become a happy person, someone who can experience joy and bliss, then those pieces are no longer serving you. And so they actually start to feel uncomfortable and they feel restrictive and they feel like they're shutting you off. And
Right.
so those are the pieces that we want to release so that we can become more of our pure self, going back to that day we were born.
Right. And I think one of the big things for me is, I mean, kind of like you're saying, how like people like to be in, people can like and find comfort in misery. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that was my childhood. And I think that's kind of the struggle area I'm having now with the grief is now that I went through this traumatic event, I let myself get back to where I was, that comfort area from my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying so hard to bring myself back out of it. And again, I got to remember it's not a light switch you just turn on. You got to make the steps towards it. But it's not serving me. So
Right.
releasing that is so important because now that I see that there's a pattern of how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I address something that's almost being brought up from my childhood, even if that's not where my mind's at with it? That's just the reaction I'm having.
Forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgive yourself and forgive those. And it's the perfect line from the prayer: forgive those who trespass against you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
We don't want to have have a negative victim mentality against them because that holds us down. And you
Yes.
started by saying, how do I raise my vibration? Well, one of the things is to recognize that we are never victims. We have been victims.
It's a
I don't
choice.
want to take away that, right? We have been victims. This was a discussion that I had with somebody yesterday live. So if anybody's hearing this right now, they can scroll down and see this discussion. It's important to honor the person who was the victim, but then you get to restory it and you get to recognize that I went through that for a reason and I now am someone else because of it.
Right.
And that's forgiveness.
And it's so true, though. I remember when I started doing the work, just thinking back, I haven't really thought about it till you brought it up, but I remember I went when I was going through the depression. I ended up going through rehabilitation for all the stuff I was going through, and one of the classes when you go through rehabilitation, they send you through the AA program,
Mm-hmm.
and I recognized how important the forgiveness was because there was so many people that I held in negative esteem in my heart, things
Yeah.
that triggered me because of where I was with that, and I did go through a process of reaching out, trying to really forgive them and move on beyond them. I maybe didn't bring them back in my life,
Mm-hmm.
but I let myself move beyond that because it was something that I held with him.
Mm-hmm.
Just didn't realize what I was doing until now. Holy crap. Wow, that's beautiful.
Okay. So we've got about 2 minutes left. Do you have any last questions or any comments that you want to make before we wrap this up?
For when you get into a really bad place with your mind, when that spiral gets in bad points, because as I've noticed, it's like I've gotten better about bouncing back the refraction period, that 90 seconds. But when the negative emotions, the depression starts to cycle you until you get to a point where you feel almost paralyzed, what would you recommend to do?
So that goes back to that question. If I knew that this was only going to last for the next 60 minutes, how would I treat myself?
Okay. That
Okay.
is a
And then
beautiful question.
do it and then do it. So if it's, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry if that screaming is coming through. But if the answer is I would go take a bath and I would use beautiful scented soaps and salts, then that's what you want to do. I would go take a walk. Then that's what you want to do. Right?
Right.
Ask yourself, how would I treat myself if I knew this was only going to last for the next 60 minutes? And then allow yourself to do that for yourself. And the funny thing is, most times you'll actually find yourself lasting in that cycle for less than 60 minutes because you're taking care of it. You're honoring it. You're acknowledging that this is existing. This is a part of me. And it's okay. It's okay that I'm in a negative moment. And I'm going to treat myself well until I get out of this negative moment. Instead of what we usually do is bashing ourselves and pushing it down and toxic positivity. Oh, just suck it up. Put it on your big boy pants. All of those fun sayings are actually perpetuating the length of this cycle rather than shortening it.
I think I finally have my head wrapped around what honoring it means now. Like that's the one thing I haven't been able to fully understand. Like letting yourself feel it. I've been trying to do all that. But I see what you're saying now. Okay, that's a new tool for the toolkit. Thank you so much for everything.
Michael, thank you so much. It was really great having this talk with you.
Likewise, I always appreciate about your advice and your wisdom.
And now, if anyone else is interested, you can go to Crystal Clarity Life Coaching. You can go to my contact form, and there's a drop-down menu that says Coffee with a Coach. Go ahead, shoot me an email that tells me your question, what it is that you want to talk about, and we'll get you scheduled on Coffee with a Coach. Also, if you're interested in finding out more about these concepts that Michael and I were talking about today, E3, it's a 16-week in-depth coaching course. It is a phenomenal course that will walk you through step by step how to go through what Michael was just asking about. And so if you're interested in that, set up a complimentary consultation with me, and I would love to talk to you.
It's worth it.
Thanks, Michael. Have a great day.
Hey, you as well. Thank you.